Namaste and welcome to another episode of the Vichaar Manthan Sustainable Narratives podcast. Very excited today to bring you yet another conversation in our culture and literature vertical. Today we are going to be speaking to Kushal Mehra to understand a little bit more about this vertical, a little bit more about the panel discussion that he will be hosting, and a little bit more about why narratives are important and the sustainability of those. To all of those that have not registered yet, you need to go to vichaarmanthan.org. Please do register. This is an exclusive event and tickets are limited. Kushalji, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot for inviting me, man. Looking forward to chatting with you and hosting the event on the day of on the supposed date when it's going to happen.
Excellent. And so for anyone that hasn't registered, it's 15th of September, 2022. Kushalji, we're talking about culture and literature. Why is something like that important to society?
It's important because it depends on who writes it. So as they say, history is usually written by the one who won. O-N-E-W-O-N, right? Pardon my Indian accent. So it's very important. And in anthropology, they call it, there is an emic view and there is an etic view, right? There is an insider's view and there is an outsider's view. And it matters at times because people have different ways of looking at something, and cultural nuances are lost sometimes. For example, certain words, even in the realm of spirituality or cultural understanding, sometimes there are words that may not have an actual meaning in your language. That word might be very specific to your worldview or your understanding. And sometimes when somebody else from the outside writes about you, they may not understand that view very well, and they may express it in a certain way, and that could dilute the impact of your message. And as certainly, if that implies to religious studies, it certainly implies to historical and cultural studies too, because culture is a complex phenomenon, and it changes from place to place, time to time, and with the moral arc of the world continuously expanding and us changing all the time, even what we might look at, even as insiders at times in our own culture, and what our ancestors might want to say about something, that also changes, right? Some things that might have been practiced 3,000 years ago may not be practiced today because we just don't do those things anymore. So that's why who writes the history is very important. How it is written is very important. What is the cultural narrative? It's very important. And who is narrating it is also very important. Having said that, it does not mean that we delve into the Derridian discourses, the power games, or the Foucauldian discourses, and we say everything is a narrative. It's all power games. No, there are objective realities that other people can do. You can easily steelman another person's perspective, given you to rigorously, you rigorously study that. So I don't want to be, going down to a slippery slope, which I often feel is a problem also, which is never spoken about. Oh, everybody talks about Orientalism, for example. What about Occidentalism?
Okay.
Is there Occidentalism or not? That's the thing.
Sure. No, great points. And especially, if you think about the West, typically has, and the British in particular, have colonized, I don't know what percentage of the world. And so the point you made around the history is then rewritten by the victors. And especially when you have things like books and education and scripture having been burnt for many years, so that history is almost lost. How does one culture, how does one civilization reclaim its narrative? How does it re-cement what it once knew? And is that even a challenge for most cultures, or just some ancient ones?
It depends. It depends. It depends on the availability of the resources, the intention, and the availability of literally human beings who are interested in studying it. And then it all goes down to how many people from that native culture are themselves interested in knowing about their culture. So it is not one. There are multiple variables involved in a situation like that. So in the case of India, we clearly have numbers, even sufficient enough who want to know about their past. So that's not an issue. There might be an issue in the number of scholars available.
We don't play in the academic realms enough.
No, I don't think so. We do, and also it's a double-edged sword. While we do have scholars like Mr. Shah and Dr. Panajpe coming over for this panel, but if you look at far few within that entire narrative, there is shortage. Now you could come back and say that the academia actually actively discourages people who want to look at it from an insider's perspective, and that is also true. But having said that, you still don't have people coming from outside running parallelly. Now there are, obviously, in the case of Vikram Sampath or Sanjeev Sanyal and many others have started writing about it from outside the mainstream academic force. Like, Vikram came up with this fantastic biography of, say, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. He came up with 2 volumes. So it's not like it can't be done. It can be done. It's about intent. It's about resources. And now we have those things. So I don't know. Personally, I'm very optimistic. I'm not
Sure.
a pessimist. I believe it's actually a lot of narratives are being checked, are being corrected. What I personally am more interested in is not just reclaiming our history. I'm actually more interested in looking at others through our lens now.
Okay.
I'm more interested in that, really. To be very honest, I'm a universalist at a personal level. I believe there are universal values. And I believe there is enough evidence in Hinduism to show universalism. And
Sure. And
which
so
is why I was,
what do the outside eyes say about that? Do they see
well, it
that?
depends. Well, monotheism is also universalist in that sense,
Sure.
but in a different sense. But I think the Hindu universalism is pluralism while you are universal. It's universally pluralistic. While you can practice your own things, there is some universal binding factor, which is why I am very wary of, personally, I'm very wary of um, postmodern approaches to history, which includes postcolonialism and decoloniality both. I'm actually very, very suspect of those approaches because I believe they don't believe in universality. They believe different cultures have different views, and each view is legitimate, which is
Yeah.
which is something deeply problematic if you ask me. But it is fit. I mean, these are legitimate strands of scholarship. People are coming up with them, and we should read them. We should understand them. I think they have a lot of good things to offer too. I think they have pointed out many blind spots in mainstream narratives too, which should be accepted. But beyond that, what I am interested personally is how do we now have develop our own lens, a universal lens from a dharmic perspective, and we look at the world, and we look at the world on our terms, and we steelman them. We do a proper purva paksha. We don't strawman them, which is why I spoke about Occidentalism, because a lot of narrative from India that disseminates out about what is called loosely the West is actually strawmanning the West. Because if you want to talk about some culture, you better know them. Is
That's a
my
fair
point.
point.
And you should not do the same that the Orientalists did to you. If you end up being an Occidentalist, then you basically are just a mirror image of the other side of the Orientalist, is my point.
No,
So to get over Orientalism and Occidentalism, you need universalism. You
fair
need
point.
to get rid of both.
And I think Vichaar Manthan attempts to do that, right? By actually bringing these ideas together and earnestly discuss them, right? Not necessarily come to a conclusion of sorts, but at least we're having the conversation to see where these ideas go. So Vichar, the idea of thoughts, and the Manthan is the churning of those to bring about nuanced debate, to actually see if the ideas we're talking about can stand up to the test of time, and can we analyze them in a dharmic way, to see if they're wholesome, if they benefit society, if they are conducted in a loving and compassionate manner. But the world is changing. There's so much going on. We're talking about decarbonization, and there's the liberal West, and everything that comes from sort of decolonization as well. For someone who doesn't know where to begin, especially with, say, their Indian history, where do you think one might start? Where's probably a good place to begin?
I think there are many places. And I just want to be very careful here. I'm not opposed to decolonizing.
Sure.
I use the word decoloniality. They're different. Postcolonialism, decoloniality, and decolonizing are different things. So I just want to be very careful in my words. But where do we start? Well, I started here. There was a history and culture of Indian people. It was 11,000 pages by R.C. Majumdar. It's there. Well, you can start there. It's the entire history of India till the independence, right from the Vedic times. That's one place. You can start there. That's the entire history. So it's not like it's not been done. It's been done. It's quite rigorous. And R.C. Majumdar is one of the best historians. And you have Sitaram Goel, you have mainstream historians, which I know it's going to, they themselves are guilty at times of the same Orientalism living in India. But Romila Thapar, you should read them. I believe you should read Romila Thapar too.
Sure.
Then you should read Ram Swarup, you should read Vikram Sampath, and there are many others you can read. So it's not like it's not available. It's about intent, not anything else. People almost make it sound as if there's no material at times. It's not the case. I mean, you can read Dr. Paranjpe, Dr. Shah. You can read them, right? I mean, Dr. Paranjpe has written so many books on Gandhi, on many other figures. So it's not like you cannot read them. You can. It's just that you don't. So it's a tamasic mind, in the words of Swami Vivekananda, will always find excuses. There is enough material out there. The material is no longer an issue, even when it comes to writing Indian history on Indian terms. If you want to know cultural, or if you want to understand darshanas, I think if you want to get trained in Mimamsa, there are enough schools. If you want to get trained in Advaita, there are enough schools in India. It's not like there are no schools. They're still thriving. There are proper mathams and sampradayas that still strive and survive in India. It's on you if you want to go and study there or not. The point is that you could go to Chinmay Mission and get a lesson in Bhagavad Gita, for example, or you can go to ISKCON, depending on which sampradaya you want to belong to. All the things are available. What is not available, in my view, is the intent of the person to go and take the baby steps and go and actually learn it. And it's only a tamasic mind that does that. A tamasic mind always blames the other.
You've got to be the man in the arena. You actually have to take those steps, and maybe it's if it's not a capacity issue, then capability, and that takes real skill and character to actually take time, make effort to learn about things that you may deem important. So I think you're right. Actually, intent does come into it. So for everyone listening, Kushalji has listed a number of different avenues that you could start exploring. And if you can't do any of those, definitely tune in to the Sustainable Narratives Conference. Kushalji is talking about a couple of the guests that we're going to be having on for the panel discussion. And the title of that is Indian History Truly Indian? And so without going into too much detail, Kushalji, do you reckon you could answer that? Is Indian history truly Indian?
As of now, it partially is. Look, there are two negationisms that happen in India. And I've always said that on my podcast, on many other platforms. One is the negationism of the record of Islam in India, which happens from one wing. The other is the negationism of the record of Hindus when it comes to Jati Varna in India. That is done by another wing. Both want to negate the role of Islamism in India and its brutal past. And one side wants to negate what happened to certain Jatis in India and its brutal past. Somebody will say it is a British construct. Somebody will say it is the right-wing Hindutva construct. Right? So there are two negationisms in India. Every side focuses on the other side. Like, I'll give you another example on narratives. The whole caste narrative, for example. Both the left and the non-left in India believe there is a unicorn Hinduism. How is it a unicorn? The left thinks Hinduism is unique, that it came up with a caste system which had hierarchies. It is unique, as if the world was flat. Then Hinduism came and said, create hierarchies. The non-left says, the whole world had hierarchies and discrimination. Hinduism was unique. It never did. But the reality is, if you were a true scientific universalist and looked at it from a universal evolutionary lens, the simple answer is, it's evolutionary. Societies post-agriculture developed hierarchies. All of them started becoming rigid. Hinduism is not unique either way, the way the non-left wants it to be or the left wants it to be. It's just another meme going through a process of evolution. And we don't need to be so wary about it. So to say whether Indian history is Indian or not, it is. And it is not. So I will use Mahavir. an anekantvad. It is and it is not. Or maybe it is and maybe it is not. But it doesn't mean there is no speck of truth in it. There is enough truth in it, and there are enough lies in it. What you don't need is biased lenses of all sides. What you need is what our dharmic way is: seek the truth no matter where the chips fall. And if the chips fall and they show the Islamists being brutal, call them brutal. It doesn't mean the current day Muslim is brutal. It has nothing to do with the reality today. Just think about it, right? You guys are a British platform. The British ruled India. Do you think Britishers come to India, we go around, "Oi, white man, come here. What are you doing? What did your ancestors do? You are responsible for it." Nobody does that. Why is that logic then used for the Muslim in India today? I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting concept for sure.
That's the whole point. So there is enough truth in the history, and there are enough lies in the history. As they say in Hindi, there is a word, swadanusar, as per your taste. So you can pick and choose whatever you want. But it doesn't mean we don't need work. We do need work to correct the narratives on both sides that are factually incorrect.
That's a fair point, Kushalji. And thank you for sharing. A lot of our listeners will know that Vichaar Manthan is trying to bring about the nuance and seek the truth in all of the topics, across all of the verticals also. This year we're covering religion, wealth, political economy, political theory, civics, and culture and literature, which we're discussing here today. And actually, there's another fireside conversation taking place in the culture and literature vertical, which is titled "Seeing the Scripture from the Literature." And Pavni Dakhani will be interviewing Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji on that very concept to say, if we look at the Mahabharata, for example, and we don't have this religious sanctity or stamp over it, could we analyze it? Could we scrutinize it the same way we would do with something like Roald Dahl or J.K. Rowling or one of the new classics of the time, something that's baked into curriculum? Can we do the same thing for other religions? Are we allowed to take the Bible and critique it? Will there ever be a Bible part 2, part 3, or Torah, Quran, or anything for that matter? So I think we've discussed today why culture is important, how literature comes into that, and in particular this panel discussion that Kushalji will be hosting at Sustainable Narratives about Indian history and whether it's truly Indian. And there's something like 1.4 billion people that might be interested in this particular topic. So Kushalji, is there a particular call out or a question or something that our listeners should be thinking about when they attend Sustainable Narratives Conference, and in particular the panel discussion that you'll be hosting?
Does the truth matter or not? And if the truth matters, just pursue it relentlessly, and no matter where it takes you, to use the Star Trek analogy, to boldly go where no man has ever been before. That should be our pursuit, and that's the dharmic way. We always pursue the truth. And if we want to pursue the truth, we need to redo our history textbooks, because there is just too many lies of all the sides in those history textbooks. So the truth should matter. That's what all need. As long as the truth triumphs, we should be fine.
Satyameva Jayate.
Oh, yes.
Truth alone triumphs. It's a great metaphor that we're using here today. So Kushalji, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for introducing this panel discussion on culture and literature. And to everyone listening at home, if you have not registered yet, please do go on to vichaarmanthan.org, sign up for your ticket to this exclusive platform on AirMeet, where we are hosting Sustainable Narratives Conference 2022. Any questions or concerns, you can leave them in the comment below. Do subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and your favorite streaming platform. Kushalji, thank you once again. And to everyone else, thank you.
Thanks
and namaste.